Okay, good morning to all. So today we are going to discuss about neurological manifestations of syphilis. So as you know very well, syphilis is a chronic systemic, multi-systemic disease. It is a sexually transmitted disease. Once the patient treponema pallidum, that is common cause for syphilis is treponema pallidum. Once the patient gets infected with the treponema pallidum, after a period of 2 to 3 weeks of incubation period, usually the patient develops primary syphilis. So the primary syphilis is characterized by a painless chancre over the genital areas, in males, usually chancre is found in the penile region of the penis or glans penis. In females, usually it is found near the vulval region. After some time period, days to weeks, usually the primary syphilis resolves spontaneously with or without treatment. After a period of latent period of weeks to months, patients may develop into secondary syphilis. So secondary syphilis is characterized by generalized mucocutaneous lesions with generalized lymphadenopathy. Then patients may develop, after years, they may land up in latent syphilis. That is, most of the times they present with multiple systemic involvement like cardiac involvement or neurological manifestations. So in this class, we will discuss about neurological manifestations of syphilis. So before the antibiotic era, syphilis is a most common disease, but after the invention of penicillin, the disease is declined in the both developed and developing countries. But after the HIV era, the incidence of syphilis is increasing nowadays. So nowadays, the number of reported cases of early syphilis has increased, and late syphilis is also, the incidence of late syphilis is also increased because of increased lifespan of the patients and the change of clinical presentation of syphilis from parenchymal damage to chronic meningovascular disease. So before the HIV era, the syphilis is most commonly presents the parenchymal damage, parenchymal disease in late syphilis, but after the HIV era, usually it presents with the chronic meningovascular disease in late syphilis. So as I told in the previous slide, syphilis is caused by a slender spiral that is a treponema pallidum.
Auntie.
Coming to pathogenesis of neurosyphilis, so once the treponema pallidum invades the CNS within a period of 3 months to 8 months of a primary infection. So after a period of 3 months to 18 months of primary syphilis, usually the treponema invades the CNS. So once the treponema pallidum enters into the central nervous system, uh, it, it causes meningitis or meningovascular diseases. Suppose if the treponema is not involving the central nervous system within a period of 2 years, usually the incidence of neurosyphilis will be very less. And if the CS of primary syphilis is negative at the end of 5 years, the risk of developing neurosyphilis usually falls to very low level. Coming to various clinical syndromes of neurosyphilis. So all forms of neurosyphilis usually begins with meningitis. Coming to early syphilis, the manifestations of neurological manifestations of early syphilis are meningitis and meningovascular disease. And late syphilis, usually after 1 to 12 years of early syphilis, they develop late syphilis. followed by they will develop other manifestations of neurological manifestations like general paresis, tabes dorsalis, optic atrophy, and meningomyelitis. So majority of the patients, they may present with more than one form of the disease. The pure form of this form is not usually seen. Majority of the patients, they may present with one or two combinations of these neurological manifestations. Coming to meningitis due to neurosyphilis. So this is the initial manifestation of the neurosyphilitic infection. Usually occurs in approximately 25% of all cases of syphilis, and majority of the patients usually they present as asymptomatic, and they can be discovered only by doing lumbar puncture with CSF analysis. Sometimes, rarely, patients may present with other manifestations like cranial nerve palsies. Some patients may present with seizures, strokes, and sometimes patients may present with symptoms of increased intracranial pressure like headache, vomiting, projectile vomitings, and seizures. So the meningitis may persist in an asymptomatic state and leads to parenchymal damage after a period of years. In some patients, in case of neurosyphilitic meningitis, there will be a possibility of spontaneous regression with or without it. So asymptomatic neurosyphilitic meningitis is the most important form of neurosyphilis, and by treating the all asymptomatic neurosyphilis patients, we will prevent the symptomatic varieties of various manifestations of neurosyphilis. So asymptomatic neurosyphilis is usually recognized only by the changes in the CSF. Usually they don't have any manifestations of symptoms and signs of neurosyphilis. Usually they will be recognized by some abnormalities in CSF with past history of syphilis. So the characteristic manifestations of CSF analysis in a patient with neurosyphilitic meningitis. CSF analysis is a sensitive indicator for the presence of active neurosyphilitic infection. The most common abnormalities found in a CSF patient with CSF neurosyphilis patients. Usually, if you see the cells, there will be pleocytosis up to 100 cells. Majority of the cells are lymphocytes, and there will be elevation of protein levels up to 400 to 200 milligram per deciliter, and there will be oligoclonal bonding will be there, and glucose levels usually normal, and there will be an increase in the gamma globulin levels and with positive serological test. These are the most common manifestations of case of findings in a patients with neurosyphilitic meningitis. Coming to next most common variety, meningeal syphilis. Meningeal syphilis is usually develops within a period of 2 years from the onset of primary syphilis, and the most commonly they may present with headache, neck stiffness, and sometimes they may present with seizures and mental confusion, and occasionally there is features of increased intracranial pressure. And majority of the patients, they don't have any fever, afebrile, and this is one important clue to differentiate it from the tuberculous meningitis. Usually patients with tuberculous meningitis, they will present with chronic long duration of fever, but in case of neurosyphilitic meningitis, usually patients will be afebrile. Coming to treatment and treatment of meningitis due to neurosyphilis, and if you give uh, adequate treatment within a period of time, usually the progress will be good, and the symptoms usually disappear within days to weeks after treatment. And if the CSF remains abnormal and the treatment is not continued, then that leads to the subsequent development of other forms of neurosyphilis like meningococcal and meningitis, and sometimes some patients may develop tabes dorsalis. So after the treatment, usually the changes will usually seen in CSFR. First, the lymphocytes will be disappear. Next, the protein levels comes to normal level, and gamma globin levels will be reduced. Then, the positive serologies are last to revert to normal. Coming to next condition of neurosyphilis, that is meningovascular syphilis. This is the most common form of neurosyphilis nowadays, and most commonly develops after 6 to 7 years after the primary infection of syphilis, and sometimes it may develop within a period of 9 months to up to 10 to 11 years after primary infection. So coming to pathological changes usually seen in meningovascular syphilis is usually there will be infected meninges, and there will be inflammation and fibrosis of small arteries, that is called adenoarteritis. Because of this inflammation and fibrosis of small arteries, leads to narrowing of the vessels and finally occlusion of the vessels. Because of this narrowing and occlusion of the small arteries, that results in infarctions, majority of the uh, distal territories of lenticulostriate branches, which arises from the middle and anterior cerebral arteries. They develop strokes because of infarction. Suppose if the patients develop recurrent strokes after adequate treatment of meningovascular syphilis, then you should suspect some non-syphilitic vascular disease of the brain. So CSF examination in meningovascular meningitis, usually there will be increased cells and protein contents will be elevated, and gamma globulin, same as seen in meningitis, neurosyphilitic meningitis. And coming to progress of meningovascular syphilis, the neurological signs that remain after 6 months will usually be permanent. So adequate treatment will prevent further vascular episodes. So next condition of neurosyphilis is paratic neurosyphilis, also known as general paresis. So this is mainly due to long-standing meningitis. They usually develop 15 to 20 years after the primary infection of syphilis. Previously, it was a major cause of mental illness, and nowadays it is a very rare condition. It is not seen nowadays. And if some patients develop the progress to the this condition like the general paresis or paratic neurosyphilis, usually it is seen in middle age group of patients, usually in 35 to 50 years age group. So these paratic neurosyphilis or general paresis is characterized by dementia, dysarthria, and some patients may develop myoclonic jerks, action tremors, and some patients may develop seizures with focal signs, and there will be upper motor neuron signs, and the characteristic picture of pupils are Argyll-Robertson pupil. So once the disease is progressing, then patients may develop impaired station and gait, so that results in unsteadiness of gait and dysarthria, and sometimes patients may develop tremors of the tongue and hands. So finally, leads to a bedridden state. That's why it is known as paratic. So some patients may develop strokes, hemianopia, aphasia, and cranial palsy. Coming to management of this paratic syphilis, usually if you start treatment early, the prognosis is very good. And suppose if you're not given treatment without a period, so without treatment, some patients may develop progressive mental illness, and death may occur within a period of 3 to 4 years. So next most common condition of neurosyphilis is diabetic neurosyphilis or tabes dorsalis. Usually it is developed after 15 to 20 years after the onset of primary infection, and majority of the symptoms with this tabes dorsalis is usually they may present with lightning pains and ataxia and urinary incontinence. And coming to signs of tabes dorsalis, because of upper motor neuron involvement, they may present with signs. Coming to signs, absent tendon reflexes at the knee and ankle, and impaired vibratory and position sense in legs, and patients may have Ramberg's sign. So the main important clue for this tabes dorsalis is usually patients may present with ataxia. So ataxia is a purely result of sensory defect, and coming to motor, power is fully retained in most of the cases, and pupils, Argyll-Robertson pupil, that is accomplished reflex present, and some patients may present with ptosis and ophthalmoplegia. And patients with tabes dorsalis, usually they will have severe lancinating or lighting pains uh, seen in more than 90% of cases. And these pains are usually sharp, stabbing, and brief in character, and more frequent in legs. But sometimes these pains are roaming over the body from face to feet, anywhere in the body. But majority of the lancinating pains are usually seen in lower legs. So as I told in the previous slide, ataxia is the most prominent feature in the established phase of the disease like tabes dorsalis, and the patient usually totters and staggers while standing and walking. And when the ataxia is severe, walking becomes impossible despite the normal strength of the leg muscles. And coming to complications of this tabes dorsalis, usually they may, because of sensory deficit, usually they may develop trophic lesions and perforating ulcers in the feet and Charcot joints. So coming to Charcot joints, usually they occur in less than 10% of patients with tabes dorsalis, and these Charcot joints are most commonly seen in hips, knees, and ankles. And occasionally, the lumbar spine or upper limbs may be affected. And usually, the process Charcot joints usually begins as an osteoarthritis with the repeated injury to the insensitive joints. They progress to destruction for the articular surfaces. And because of osseous architecture disintegrates, majority of the patients then develop fractures, dislocations, and subluxations. So the basic abnormality is repeated injury to an anesthetic joint. So in the patients with tabes dorsalis, if the CSF examination is positive for syphilis, then the patient should be treated with penicillin. So coming to management of neurosyphilis, so the drug of choice for syphilis or neurosyphilis is penicillin G. So it should be given intravenously with a dose of 18 to 24 million units daily for minimum 14 days. Suppose if a patient have any allergy to penicillins, then you should replace the penicillin with the erythromycin and tetracycline. So these substitute drugs like erythromycin and tetracycline should be continued for 20 to 30 days depending upon the clinical symptoms and signs. And suppose if the patient have severe lancinating pains, uh, you should give gabapentin and analgesics or carbamazepine to relieve the lancinating pains in both lower limbs. Suppose if the patient have Charcot joints, that should be treated with bracing or fusion. So follow-up of patients with various forms of neurosyphilis. So in all forms of neurosyphilis, the patient should be re-examined every 3 to 6 months, and CSF should be retested after 6 months interval. Suppose if after 6 months the patient is free of symptoms and the CSF abnormalities have been reversed, then there is no need of continuation of treatment. After 12 months of follow-up, suppose if you should examine the clinical examination and lumbar puncture. Suppose if there is any cells, CSF cells, lymphocytic pleocytosis remains high in the CSF, you should be lumbar puncture should be repeated every 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, if there is any increased pleocytosis cells in the CSF and elevated protein levels, and then you should continue another full course of penicillin should be given to these patients. So that is about neurosyphilis. So next coming to syringomyelia. So syringomyelia is it is defined as a chronic progressive degenerative developmental disorder of the spinal cord, and there is a developmental cavity in the spinal cord, usually that is prone to enlarge and produce progressive myelopathy. So syringomyelia is nothing but a developmental cavity in the spinal cord, usually in the cervical cord. Because of this enlargement of this cavity, because of compression of spinal cord, usually the patients may present with progressive myelopathy. And there is a cavitation of the central parts of the spinal cord, usually in the cervical region. Suppose if the cavity is extended upwards up to medulla oblongata and pons, that is called syringobulbia. Sometimes the cavity in the spinal cord may extend downwards up to the thoracic or even up to the lumbar segments also. So in case of syringomelia, usually symptoms begins insidiously in adolescence or early adulthood and progress irregularly and may undergo spontaneous arrest for several years. So syringomelia is characterized clinically by painless weakness and wasting of the limbs and arms because of brachial amyotrophy and segmental sensory loss of dissociated type, that is loss of thermal and painful sensation with sparing of tactile joint position and vibratory sense. So there is a segmental sensory loss of dissociated type, that is there is a loss of thermal and painful sensation with sparing of tactile joint position and vibratory sense. So in case of syringomelia, there is a number of developmental abnormalities are usually found. So coming to the various forms of developmental abnormalities, abnormalities of vertebral column usually produces kyphoscoliosis. So kyphoscoliosis is the most common vertebral column abnormalities, and another uh, abnormalities with the cervico-occipital region. Usually they have short neck, low hairline, and the odd posture of the head and neck, and fusion of cervical vertebra, and abnormality of the cerebellum and brainstem. Usually they type 1 Chiari malformation. So this is the picture of lateral bending of the spine, that is kyphoscoliosis. Coming to classification of syringomelia, there are 4 types: type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. So type 1 is syringomelia with obstruction of the foramen magnum and dilatation of the central canal. So it is a developmental type. There are 2 types in type 1, that is which type 1 Chiari malformation. Other one is obstructive lesions of the foramen magnum. Coming to type 2 syringomelia, that is idiopathic developmental type. Here, syringomelia without obstruction of the foramen magnum. So type 1 is syringomelia with obstruction of the foramen magnum and dilatation of the central canal. Type 2 is syringomelia without obstruction of the foramen magnum. And type 3 is syringomelia with other disease of the spinal cord, that is acquired types. And majority of the type 3 are due to spinal cord tumors, traumatic myelopathy, and spinal arachnoiditis and patchy meningitis, and secondary myelomalacia from hard compression. Coming to type 4, that is pure hydromelia, developmental dilatation of the central canal with or without hydrocephalus. So there are 4 types of syringomelia: type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. Coming to pathophysiology of syringomelia, so there are so many theories which are controversial, but the main abnormality in syringomelia is there will be some interference with the normal flow of CSF. So sometimes cavities may be developed due to trauma or myelitis or necrotic spinal cord tumors and chronic arachnoiditis. They are called acquired cavitations of the cord in areas of necrosis. That is called syrinx cavities. So the main pathological abnormality is there will be some flow obstruction to the flow of normal CSF. So the normal flow of CSF from the central canal to the fourth ventricle and its outlets is prevented by obstruction of the foramen of Luschka and Megendie. So as a result of this obstruction, a pulse wave of CSF pressure is transmitted into the cord from the fourth ventricle through the central canal. So coming to clinical features of syringomelia, usually the clinical features depends upon the extension of the syrinx, and also depends upon the associated pathological changes. So coming to most common type 1 idiopathic and Chiari developmental syringomelia. So symptoms usually begin in early adult life, that is 20 to 40 years of age group, and males and females are equally affected, and symptoms and signs are discovered accidentally. For example, because of repeated painless burns or atrophy of the hand because of loss of sensation or the lower upper limbs. Usually they may develop painless burns, and the onset is usually insidious and the course is irregularly progressive. For diagnosis of syringomyelia, there should be three classical elements. So number one is segmental weakness and atrophy of the hands and arms, and there should be loss of some or all tendon reflexes in arms, and there should be a segmental anesthesia of dissociated type, that is loss of pain and thermal sense and preservation of the sense of touch over the neck, shoulders and arms, which leads to painful injuries and burns over the hands. So this slide is showing some loss of pain and temperature over the upper extremities like cap-like distribution and with preservation of light touch and proprioception. So coming to syringobulbia, that is extension of the cavity into the medulla oblongata, and majority of the patients with syringobulbia, they may present with palatal or vocal cord paralysis, dysarthria, and patients may develop horizontal or vertical nystagmus and dizziness or vertigo and tongue weakness with atrophy. How to diagnose syringomyelia or syringobulbia? So for confirmation, usually simple clinical history and examination is sufficient. But for confirmation of the diagnosis, you require radiological confirmation. So for radiological confirmation, MRI brain and entire spinal cord is necessary. So usually the MRI brain and entire spinal cord shows the longitudinal extent of the syrinx, and it also shows some posterior causal structures like cerebellar Chiari malformations, and it also shows the development of hydrocephalus. So this slide is showing some cavity over the cervical region that is called syrinx. Coming to management of syringomyelia, generally unsatisfactory, and suppose if there is any cerebellar Chiari tonsillar herniation, that is usually treated with surgery, most commonly decompressed by suboccipital craniectomy with upper cervical laminectomy and placement of a graft. Obstruction of fourth ventricular flow is re-established by this procedure. Suppose if patient has Chiari malformations, shunting of hydrocephalus should be generally received any attempt to correct the cervix. And surgery may stabilize the neurological deficit, and sometimes it may improve some patients. Suppose if the syringomyelia secondary to trauma or infection, they should be treated with a decompression and retrievals procedure in which a small shunt is inserted between the syrinx cavity and the subarachnoid space. And coming to treatment of syringomyelia, due to some intramedullary spinal cord tumors, usually they require resection of the tumors. So that is about the syringomyelia. So neurosyphilis and syringomyelia. So neurosyphilis is it is a late manifestation of syphilis. Usually develops after years together, that is 20 to 30 years. There are so many manifestations like meningitis. Asymptomatic meningitis is the most common form of neurosyphilis, and the meningovascular meningitis is another form. Majority of the patients, they will have some asymptomatically, they may present asymptomatic and some abnormal CSF findings, and treatment is with penicillin. Penicillin should be given in the 18 to 24 million units intravenously up to 2 weeks. Suppose if patient have an allergy to penicillin, then it should replace the penicillin with erythromycin or doxycycline. That should be continued for 18 to 30 days, 20 to 30 days. Coming to syringomyelia is a developmental disorder because of cavity in the spinal center of the spinal cord. They may present with painless weakness and wasting of the hands and arms, and segmental sensory loss, that is dissociative type, loss of thermal and painful sensation with sparing of tactile, joint position, and vibratory sense. Diagnosis is confirmed by clinical and radiological investigations. MRI usually shows the extent of the cavity in the spinal cord. Treatment is most of the times unsatisfactory, and majority of the patients require surgical management, decompression by suboccipital craniotomy, and sometimes upper cervical laminectomy with placement of graft. And we should for Chari malformations, they require shunting of hydrocephalus. So that is about syringomyelia. So in the next class, we will discuss about coma. What are the various causes for coma? How to diagnose, how to treat the various causes of coma. Thank you.